Welcome to the Inferno Cast. Today's guest is a fourth-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's also a world champion. He's one of the original members of the Brazilian top team, and he's fought in the IFL and the UFC. Please welcome Fabiano Scherner. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing all right. I just had my coffee. Can't really do anything without some coffee, right? So,
Right, that's it.
yeah, I'm happy now.
Excellent, man. I'm glad to hear that. I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me today. You're one of the legends in the sport because you've been around for so long and you've done so much for the industry. And I really wanted to go back and kind of talk about how you found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and how you found MMA and how that competition has kind of led you across the globe. Do you remember how you found martial arts as a kid?
Books.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, so I came from a really small town in Brazil, and first of all, like a bunch of friends, like we were just like playing around and going through some garage stuff, in some of my friends' house, and we found some books in there about martial arts, and there's a couple of books, about kung fu, and then we start looking at those books and then trying, to understand. We're talking about like kids, 7, 8 years old, right? So couldn't really perform like in the books. We didn't have anyone, like older, but we found this little kind of club, we call ourselves, Kung Fu Club of the neighborhood, Of course, that didn't, go that long. You couldn't learn really, there was nobody to taught us, to teach us. But that's how, then started. Then later, growing up, I became a big fan of Mike Tyson, so watching him fight, in Brazil. His fights will go on like, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning, and I'll never forget, some of the fights, like we'll just stay awake, me and my uncle, to watch. And then, like when you're so excited, you want to wait all the way, when they're going to start, and it's like, oh man, is that pizza left over in the kitchen? I got to grab that, slice pretty quick, you go to the kitchen, grab that leftover pizza slice, you come back and the fight was over. I was like, oh, Tyson, come on, So yeah, became a big fan of that. And then, later when I was 16, yeah, almost 17 years old, then I started training taekwondo, and I became a black belt in taekwondo before I even
A black belt in taekwondo, man, that's awesome. That's because that's a story of a lot of guys that started martial arts, especially in the States, because that's all that was available was taekwondo.
Mhm.
So that's really awesome. So boxing got you that was kind of your first thing. You fell in love with Mike Tyson and his style. Then you found taekwondo, ended up getting a black belt. Where did it go from there?
Well, from there, then I moved, from my hometown to a bigger town in a different state in Brazil. And, time's passing, and there was one night, I was at work. I was working in this hotel, and it was a winter time, so the hotel was closed, nothing to do. I was watching TV. That was the first time, then I saw on TV MMA, and that was UFC São Paulo when Vitor Belfort, knocked out Vanderlei Silva.
That was a
And then I
big
was like,
day.
what is that? And I was like, man, that's awesome. Like I wanna do something like that. You know what I mean? Because I've been a big kid. I started in sports like really early. I did basketball, volleyball, handball. Growing up, but my type of body, didn't really, you know, uh, go up pretty well for basketball. For volleyball, I was too heavy, tall enough, but, heavy. I always, started like carrying so much muscles, when I was 19 years old, I was already like 225 pounds, And we're talking about like, 12% body fat so big
Yeah.
boy. So maybe if I was in the United States, I would be a football player, or a wrestler, but in Brazil, we don't have those, Anyway, like fighting, being a boxer, that was one of my things. I wanted to be a boxer, but the boxing clubs in Brazil, they're mostly São Paulo, Rio, you know, and I had no desire to move to those big towns. Back then, coming from a small town, those big towns scared the shit out of you. So I saw that, and then I was like, man, I really want to do something like that, right? And I called my 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 coach and taekwondo coach, because he was a different town now. He was like, hey, do you know anyone here? I want to start training again, taekwondo, blah blah. It's like, yeah, I have one of my black belts. He is located where you at, and then I'll get you in touch with him. So we were talking about the time, we don't have cell phones yet. I mean, they're starting, yeah. You have those big Motorola's,
Yeah.
look like a
Huge.
freaking brick, yeah. So he called that guy, so we got in touch. He started training. I didn't say nothing in the beginning what I wanted to do it. I was just like going, to his studio, and like I start turned down, some bags in there, like, he's like, so what are you doing? Like, because taekwondo, like we're working technique and stuff, but you're like pretty aggressive. It's like, well, did you ever watch this thing they call Vale Tudo? Yeah, he's like, yeah, I seen it. It's like, yeah, I want to do that. He's like, you want to do that? Well, let to do that, you gotta start training ground finding, because they're gonna eat you alive in there if you just go there. Like you can be good in your feet, but he's like, so what I have to do is like, well, let me talk to some people, and then we go from there. Let me see what the where you can go and train your ground. And I was like, ground? It's like, what exactly? It's like, well, jiu-jitsu. And I heard like when Vitor get in the cage and they're talking about this jiu-jitsu, Carson Gracie team that was at that time, they called Carson Gracie team the most scary MMA team in the world, because they were like, man, they had a team that was like kicking everybody's ass, and they have people fighting on several different shows, United States, in Japan and in Brazil. So he came back to me a week later, and then it's like, well, you got to go to this, Gracie studio downtown, and that was like 1.5 hours away from my was.
Wow. Hour and a half one way.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, all right, okay. So I think you're gonna let it aside for now. But there's a guy, a black belt in judo and purple belt in jiu-jitsu did open a studio at where I was, during the summer, because I was living in an island called Florianopolis in Brazil. I don't know if you're familiar with, Brazilian geography. So Florianopolis is an island in South Brazil, and I was in the north of this island, right? And so he did open this jiu-jitsu studio, judo jiu-jitsu studio during the summer. And I was the one, like, he was putting together the mat, and I went there, and it was like, hey, I want to sign up for. He's like, oh, it didn't open sign up yet. It's like, no, here, I want to sign up up front. I want to make sure that, because this is going to be packed. I told him, So my idea, like, everyone wants to, become an MMA fighter. So I started there, and then, after a couple of months, it's like, man, you got to go to the headquarters downtown, because everyone was white belt in there. And then we were talking about 300-pounder, on the mat, throwing people against the wall. Like in 2 months, I broke two kids' arms, not intentionally,
Right.
just because I was too strong,
Yeah.
too strong. And then he's like, you got to go downtown, train with those guys, So then I went there, and the name of the gym was Ataque Duplo, run by Murilo Rupp and Sergio Sá. And they were affiliated, to Carson Gracie. And then when Brazilian top team, they Bustamante, Liborio, all those guys, they split away from Carson, so he went with them too. So as a blue belt, then I start going, to Rio to compete, and that's when like Liborio start, watching, training there, and then he came to me and was like, hey, do you want to move to Rio and train with us? And I was like, yeah, that's a big move, It's like I have to leave some things behind, At that point, I had my own house, my job in the south, But I told myself, like, man, I gotta do this now or never. I rather find out, what this is going to turn out to me uh now, because I don't want to be 50 years old and just sitting talking to friends like, man, when I was younger I could do this, but I didn't. So failing or not failing, I want to find out the answer. So yep, I moved to Rio, and then that's pretty much like everything started. But my idea was, like learn jiu-jitsu to apply in MMA. I wanted to become an MMA, but I'll tell you, like when I started doing jiu-jitsu, I stopped all the striking, I was training for. I just fell in love with jiu-jitsu. So
So you just found jujitsu, and then that just absorbed your life because you're like, man, this is what I've been looking for.
yeah, that like yeah, it just took me away from everything. I left ex-wife,
Oh
house,
man,
yeah, it cost me a marriage, like everything.
you yeah.
Well, I'm following it, yep. Yeah, jiu-jitsu is a pretty damn sexy bitch.
You definitely had to chase your dream. So how long was it before Laborio convinced you to move to the United States?
So then after I got my black belt, I was actually doing like I was a brown belt, and the body moved to United States a little bit before I got my black belt. And then Liborio then was like, "Hey, I want to take you with me, you know, to United States." And um, the plan was to move right away, after I get my black belt. But then, like him and Murilo Bustamante, they talk about it, and Murilo told us like, well, I think we need Fabiano in here because he'll be the next generation, of Brazilian top team fighters, At that point, Carlos Barreto, the heavyweights, Carlos Barreto, Maris Perry, you know, um, Nogueira was on his prime, but some of the other guys, they're already moving, on their late 30s, and so and then that's how it goes, like younger fighters, they come and they'll take this spot. And then I stuck around for another year or so, in Rio, but the only kind of uh, thing going on at that point, Brazil didn't have many shows. They had the uh, Jungle Fight was starting, and then they had
Oh yeah, that's been a while.
the
I haven't
show
heard
that yeah,
Jungle Fight in a long time.
yeah, Shootbox
Yeah.
was also putting a show. Uh, I fought in that show. I don't remember the name now. Sorry, it's been a long time.
Okay.
Um, and that was pretty much it, you know.
Was
And
there a
then
lot
that
of
was
was there a lot of gym challenge fights? Were you doing any of those where it's like, hey, just come over to the gym and these two guys are gonna fight? Were you doing any of that, or was all of your stuff kind of in a ring, there was an event, there was a crowd?
In Rio, not so much. I never got that in Rio. Rio was already doing the cross training, you know. So we'll go, Gracie Barra in, Barra da Tijuca, Marcio Cruz, he'll come and do some train a Brazilian top team, so that was already like stepping up, Brazilian top team was ahead of time, in other gyms. I believe Shootbox was doing kind of the same in Curitiba, with the gyms around, so they they realized they have to get Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy in there. They got Cristiano Marcelo in there, then, to work on their ground. Cristiano Marcelo, became one of the most hated guys in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community because they were like, oh, you're, the traitor. Can you imagine that these days? You go train an MMA camp, you be called a traitor. Not on TV anymore, right? But Marcelo was, a nice guy. I met him many times. Super cool. And I could never seen that because in Taekwondo, we always, it was a thing to go every weekend to a different dojo and challenge those guys and do sparring against each other, right? And then we'll meet, in tournaments, and fight in tournaments. That was a thing, and nobody will hate anyone. That was just, the challenge at that moment, where you compete and that's it, right? So I never understood because, in South, when I was in South Brazil before I moved to Rio, I told my coach, like, hey, I want to go to Curitiba, like one or twice a week to do some training, shoot box, because I'm doing jiu-jitsu, but I want, my goal is to become an MMA fighter. And he simply just looked at me as like, well, if you do that, then you don't show up here in this gym anymore. And I was like, oh, it's like that. I'm sorry, but I do not know the history behind jiu-jitsu. So I have to go and do some study. Then the internet was, developing in Brazil. Still, there was only one website, was tatami.com.
Yeah.
So I have to go through that, to read a page, like remember the internet.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Dial up. Yeah.
So anyway, it took me, so I have to go back, and read the whole story about it and everything, the whole thing with, luta livre and jiu-jitsu, all those things. So I got, okay, I get now why you don't want me to go there, these things, right? So, okay, I got that. But, when in Rio, then, Brazilian Top Team was already like doing some cross-training other gyms, they will allow the guys from other gyms come and do wrestling with Daryl Gawler, because we had him in there, a gold medalist, from the United States, coaching us wrestling. And Brazilian Top Team was, at that time, the only gym that could afford him, to have him there. Brazilian Top Team was the biggest, camp out of Brazil at that point. And so I stuck around, after I got my black belt in December 2002 for another year. And I did my first fight in MMA as a black belt already. That was in Florida. Things started going pretty well. And then, but then, towards to the end of the year in 2003 or 4, 3, yeah, then I talked to the boys like, I can't really keep myself in Rio. It's financially impossible to fight and live out of the money that you make fighting. So I must give up on what I'm doing right now and go back to my hometown and just do what I did before, or like you give me a chance to go in the United States, and then and I'll talk to Murilo and tell him it's like there'll be no another option, like he has to let me go, or I'll just gonna, retire. And that was just the beginning of my career. So I talked to Murilo and everything. It's like, you know, you have to let me go. So, and then then I came to the United States, and the time I arrived in here, 8 months later, I was in UFC.
Oh, wow. I bet that was a little bit different, going from, I mean, because Rio's a big city like New York, but just being in a city where you don't speak the language, you don't kind of know the culture very well. Was it,
Yeah.
was it difficult kind of finding your way, or did you just adapt and overcome?
And I thought first I was going to stay in Florida, right? And but they did open the American Top Team Olympia, Washington, uh, where Jeff Monson, Dennis Hallman, they're running the gym. And but I want to put you there with those guys, and I think they'll be, because there was already like so many Brazilians, in Florida, so that's cool. And Liborio, like always, thought ahead of his time as a coach, to always, looking down the road, and he's like, that's going to be really good for your English too. And it was, I have no Brazilians around me, so I have to learn the English. So I went to, first, like, what was that, like, I thought I knew some English, when I came. After you arrived, I was like, I don't know shit, man. And then I was like, what am I gonna do? So I just went to the public library, and I got, a Portuguese, English, Portuguese dictionary. There's like no smartphone yet,
Yeah, no translator.
So I got those, and then I got a bunch of fifth grader English exercise books, and I just studied them, and that was a good friend of mine. He has Gracie Barra, Seattle, Rodrigo, and he goes, hey, here's what you need to do. First, you need to know how to use, the verb do. When you know how to use do, did, I'm going to, then, so that's the frame of everything you're gonna say. I mean, is the you learn those, how to put before and after and all that, then everything's gonna make more sense. So in the it was very difficult in the beginning, but I was never shy, to try. I had a friend, a Brazilian friend, came, and stayed for months, and he was living in Florida for quite a while. He was there for 4 years, right? And his English was pretty good, but he would get like pissed off at me because we would go somewhere, and I was trying to speak my English, and they would look at me and like, you have any idea? Like, they do not know what the hell you're talking about. It's like, man, if I have to mimic and do shit, make me understand, like, I will,
Lots of hand
because,
signals.
yeah, somehow I have to,
Yeah.
so, and that's after 8 months, and then I was fine. Yeah, at least, like, yeah, I was
Well,
not starving.
yeah, exactly. I mean, because when you show up and you don't know the language, you don't have a routine and understand the culture, was it very difficult for you to teach at the school, and connect with the students, or did the language of martial arts bypass the words?
Yeah, man. I'll tell you, this is this is a pretty funny story. So I got a bunch. So I'm running a class, a gi class, right, in the gym, and there was absolutely no one. Like, no Jeff Monson and no Dennis Hallman. They didn't like the pajamas anyway. So all my students there, white belts, first time getting in touch with jiu-jitsu, and there was a bunch of them. Was, man, like, we opened that class, and right away we had like freaking 75 people, signing up for it. And they were like firefighters, cops, like a bunch of big people as well, uh, and how am I gonna coach this, so like I start first, like a lot of go here in the boom, boom, a lot of boom, like boom here, boom there, like. But I was like, I was just like some, like a lot of times, like, guys, how do I call this movement? And they were like, oh, you call, this way. But on my understanding, they would know, right, the name of it, right? But I should know better. They're getting in touch with jiu-jitsu first time, so they didn't know the name in English, right? So they just name it, like, because they didn't know any better, So a kimura, like kimura, I could call it kimura, but I mean, some example that I carried for years, the arm triangle, So they name it something else, right? And I kept teaching that, for, man, I call that in a different way for like 7 years, I think, until someone is like, hey, coach, that, like how you call that's totally strange, right? I was like, how's that so, Like, well, that doesn't make any sense to us. I was like, all right, okay. So then, going back, that's like how, but, like we name it that right there in the spot, right? So all my students would understand, right?
Yeah.
Because they will picture, the name and the technique, right? And in my mind, like I'll talk to someone like, yeah, we've been working this technique, probably that person like, I have
Yeah.
no clue who this
Yeah.
guy is.
Any visitor or anybody that was not from there or that trained somewhere else was probably like, what's this? Because, that was a very popular thing that was happening back in the day, was the naming of techniques was very illogical at times because nobody knew. So they would ask an English person to kind of translate it, like a flower sweep, something like that. It's like, where did that come from? And some of the moves like snaky moves, shrimping, like, some of this terminology that, was just trying to connect the idea for visual reference, that now you see a lot of people in the industry, they're trying to get a little bit more structured with the terminology so it has like a logic flow. So it's funny that, your story of just naming it, but that has happened with jujitsu as a whole on a lot of levels, but that's funny that you got into that.
Yeah, it's just like I'll give an example. So I'll get my dictionary, and go through like I'll get the words in Portuguese, the techniques, and try to translate this, straight. But
Yeah.
then, like you get that barrier, like where there's a lot of slangs in Brazil,
Yeah.
and dictionary, they pretty much they don't have the slangs, So I was like, damn, I thought, okay, translate, right? Like a sweep in Portuguese, right? We call
Espagia.
raspada, yeah.
Yeah, Espagia.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and I'll try to translate that. You'll come up with a shave, you
Yeah.
know, and other things like. And the first time, I think you gotta do this shave, you know,
Yep.
and everybody like, some people they were like, they don't wanna, they were like, kind of, they wanna laugh,
Yeah, yeah,
and I was
yeah.
like,
That same
yeah,
thing
you know what I
happened to
mean?
me when I went to Brazil, and it's so funny because it was the sweep. So I was trying to say shin sweep. Well, I had looked up sweep from English to Portuguese, and I knew shin was like canela. And so
Mhm.
I'm saying these words, and like 3 days later, one of the guys comes over and goes, "Hey, man, like I think you're trying to say sweep in Portuguese," because he spoke some English. He's like, "Yeah, it's hispagia," like kind of gave me the terminology, which I'm still terrible at Portuguese, but I was like, oh man, because I was trying to do direct translations. It doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, the direct translation of something, and then that's another thing, right? Learning the English, right? And I figure out right away. It's like, okay, man, I cannot like try to translate the Portuguese I speak, you know, with my teammates in Brazil, right? In everything in a normal life, I have to get the proper Portuguese and translate, to English, So, but later then you start also, then learn, the English slangs, then it makes easier, But like the first time you hang you hear the word like hang out, you're like, hell, like hang
Yeah.
out, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
you know what I mean? So those kind of things like how you doing, like so it's like
Yeah.
a lot of things,
For
Yeah,
sure.
you know, um,
Good
yeah,
times. Well,
you
what
just
was
start
it
to
like?
understand. You
I was
start
just
to
gonna.
understand sometimes, like when they're calling you a damn son of a bitch is actually, a compliment.
Right. Yeah.
Just,
Yeah. 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 You take it as something negative. That's all like, oh man, did I do something wrong? And it's like, no, 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 that's a good thing. Especially up in the Northwest, where you got some
yeah,
mountain folk up
man,
there. I'm
that's
actually
sick.
from there.
And then like, what? I'm sick. No,
Yeah.
that's sick.
Yeah. That's definitely a different thing. And so what was it like competing and training once you transitioned to America? Were the training camps better? Do you feel like you were more prepared, less prepared? What was it like transitioning to the training volume?
Back then.
Yeah, yeah, back then when you first come to the America and you were training for fights, like, did you feel better? Did you feel a little bit out of place? Like, how did it affect you, kind of performance-wise with the training volume?
So the difference was clear that Americans, they were training smarter than we were in Brazil in some ways, a lot of ways. I mean, we had, for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we have we had the technique, right? Uh, the best technique for Jiu-Jitsu ground fighting and everything. And we have tons of good guys, to train with, right? And also then a lot of MMA guys. But I'll tell you, like our training, like we're just for years doing that training where that kind of Rocky Balboa kind of training. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like you just gotta beat on someone, until he gets tough, right? But it's like I was like kind of like coming from taekwondo. Taekwondo is not that thing like you get in a fight. It's not like a Thai boxing. It's not like even boxing. Like Tyson was one thing. Back then, Foreman and Ali, those guys, they'll beat the shit out of each other. But, then later, boxes start changing as well. They start, putting more technique, and try not to get beat up so much in the fights, you know what I mean? So it was different between, like a fighter, like Tyson was, and then they will get a guy, like he's a fighter, but he's also smart, enough to know he doesn't like, get like too much of a damage in a fight, So the training we're doing there, it's pretty much like man, like getting ready for a fight, You get like some fresh guys, and man, they throw fresh guys on you, you know, in every round, and you got to survive. You got to do your thing,
Just make
It's like, yeah. So coming to the United States, then like started getting in touch with different training, and then I got in touch with Dennis Hallman, and Dennis Hallman, super smart guy, you know. He was also, uh, when he started, fighting MMA, he was also saw, like how important it was, He was wrestling background, but he learned jiu-jitsu, so he knew how important it was, to learn that. Jeff Monson as well start, like competing, grappling, everything coming from wrestling, He did how many boxing matches as well. So they start, these guys start, but they were training, uh, smart. And I came, the first time, so I was getting ready for a fight, my first fight, after I moved to the United States. And, you know, I, I asked him, it's like, hey, when are you going to put me in the middle to get beat up? He's like, what? It's like, yeah, like, I'm going to get some guys to beat on me. Like, well, we don't do those training, how do you do the training? But to me, it was kind of weird, It's kind of like I always thought that, but this is weak, you know what I mean?
right.
So
Yeah.
you learn one way, now it's changing. But then, like you you start like kind of, you know, like, yeah, this makes a lot more sense, you know, especially, you know, inside your head. Because when you go getting ready for a fight and you're there training and every day you pretty much get beat up, when you jump in a ring or cage, man, you scared. You're scared, and then you're thinking like, "Oh, this is gonna be rough," you know. So you're afraid. You freeze, you know. You're afraid to throw because you're only thinking about surviving, right? Because you did the whole camp, you know, like surviving, right? Here was different, you know. They're training, you know, where you know was an equal situation. So you do your rounds. Of course, there were rounds, you know, to push your cardio stamina and everything, but then you're not gonna be like a, you know, super hard, right? So when you go super hard, then they have to be in an equal situation where the other guy's gonna get tired too, you know.
Right.
So and then I started to understand, you know, like how that works inside your mind and how that makes you stronger on your mind. And after years, you know, then you can tell, like when we were younger, you know, like we don't care much about, you know, like we don't think about like how important it is to be like have the mindset to be very strong, you know,
Yeah.
because you're physically, you think you can move mountains, you know, so you totally think you can rely only your physicality, you know.
Yeah.
It was like ah, you know, so it takes a while, you know, to build that, you know. But I can tell them you could see the difference, you know, how you get like a less skilled American beating on a, you know, a better skilled Brazilian MMA fighter, you know, is because when he was in there inside the cage, you know, uh, he was mentally tougher, better prepared because, you know, he was winning his rounds during the camp, made him confident, you
Yeah.
know, while, you know, that Brazilian was just not getting any confidence, getting beat up every day. So you need to go through a hard training in your camp. And then we're talking about jiu-jitsu is the same concept, you know.
Yeah.
You go like you can go against, you know, the best black belts in the world, you know, like getting ready for, you know, for the world tournament, right? But man, if you don't get guys, you know, to tap them during the training, you know, your
Yeah.
confidence is going to shit.
It's
So
almost
you
like
need
it's almost like you're talking about, you know, performance programming of feel successful, add resistance, but keep being successful versus just don't quit. You know, like instead of being focused on like, no, no, you lose if you quit versus no, 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 you win by taking the shot, going for the submission. You know, like you program the athletes to seek success instead of seeking survival.
exactly, and you need to have that feeling that your shit works. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you like if you don't feel that it works, you know, and then you're like you're not confident, you're gonna freeze.
Yeah, you
You're gonna freeze.
hesitate. And that's where I
Yeah.
think that, and that's one thing, you know, with you and all of your experience as a fighter, you know, because I competed in MMA and as well. And like when you talk about freezing, I think that people that don't fight or compete a lot, they see like physically standing there and doing nothing when it's like, no, the freeze is a moment. Like you hesitate the split second you shouldn't have when you're like, huh, you know, like, and when you think about if you should, you already missed the moment that you should have went.
Exactly.
You know, like
Yeah.
but whenever you're a competitor and especially like with your experience, that moment of hesitation probably feels like an eternity, you know, because fights are won with millimeters and milliseconds.
Yeah.
Um, but
Because
yeah,
I'll tell
that's
you, your brain is so fast, right? Uh, in a fight, let's say you went through the camp and now you only got to do like a really hard rounds, you know, most likely you lost, you know, majority of the rounds, you know, and then you start like doing worse, you know. So when you get to the fight, now you're right there, and you have a really good, you know, let's say 1-2, right? Now you're there, and then like your brain's like throw now. So it says you the throw, but then at the same time, like your brain's gonna think like but I did that during the camp, right? It didn't work. I got punched. I got thrown down. I got knocked down. So you're like,
Yep.
like in that all that thinking, you know, it happens in a fraction of the second
Absolutely.
because it's there.
Yeah.
It's implicit. It's telling you,
Yeah.
you know what you have to do, but it's that handbrake, like it's there, like don't do it because you're not. So the confidence, has to be there. And how to you get confident? Make things work, make things your technique, everything works during the camp, right? So and now another thing is when you're doing a camp, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, whatever competition, MMA, grappling, wrestling. When you're in your gym, those are the hardest guys to go with because they know everything about you. They know your technique. They know where you're going. They know your best submission. They know your sweep. They know, whatever, right? And then, so how do you, like you're going to put your best against someone that knows you so well? You know what I mean? So it's interesting that when I got here, that wasn't a common thing in Brazil. So at the ATT Olympia, guys, they'll come, um, once a month sometimes, like sometimes twice a month from other camps, and they will do all the sparring together, you know. And then yeah, like I was sparring, and grappling Jeff Monson every freaking day. Then it's how those guys, and then in the beginning, okay, it's kind of this. They start getting your game, everything start building up, both sides, right? So I start doing a better job at wrestling against Monson. He start doing a better job, grappling against me. So and then it was like, man, like my jiu-jitsu started. It sucks right now. I can't tap, Jeff anymore.
Yeah.
Jeff
Nothing's
is probably
working.
thinking, like my wrestling sucks right now because I can't take Fabiano down that easy anymore, right? So then they'll come over, guys from Team Quest, Matt Leland, Randy Couture, a bunch of other guys, and then you go against them, and then everything works, right? I was like, great, So it's
Yeah.
there. So I think the the cross training in United States, in that way was a lot ahead of time. We'll do cross training in Rio, but we'll never spar anyone from other camps. The
Right.
very very rare. Unless that guy was a friend, one of the coaches. Has to be a really good friend, or he needed help or something. Or yeah, it was not like a two camps, like a hey, let's just part together.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
mean, I've had times where I've been like in fights and competitions, especially like even rolling where I won't go for something because I'm like, there's no way he's giving this to me. He's got to see this coming because it's so open. It's like it's right there, and then I don't take it because I think, oh man, he's got to see it coming. But then you realize you just don't play with that person very often. They don't know your game, and that opportunity is open, and that's where you got to just be confident, and you just have to commit. To like you said, you got to know your stuff works, and because I've had that where I go for the sweep, but no, because like he's got to know what's happening. He's got to know what's happening. So the paranoia works against you as well. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Well, so what's life like after fighting? Like MMA, long career, you got a bunch of fights, you got to fight on some major shows. So what happened, after you decided to retire from fighting?
Um, After fighting, then like all those years, like uh, training and being a fighter, you can be selfish. You're a teammate, but you can be selfish. Being a fighter is I'll tell you, it was a lot easier than being a coach. A fighter, you know, you only have to take care of yourself, you know, and pay your bills and etc. You know, pretty much have one job, you know, go to the gym, get your job done, you know, and that's it, and then show up to fight. Um, Now, as a coach, you know, is a totally different thing. You know, you have hundreds of people, you know, that they look up to you. You know, they want to learn from you. They want to um, talk to you. They, you know, a lot of times you have to be a psychologist. You know, you have to be their guru. You know, so you have to be a little bit of everything. You have to be the friend. You have to be the big brother. You know, but most importantly, you know, is how now you have all this knowledge, man. How do you pass that along? That's some that's a challenge. Most of the coaches, you know, they somebody they don't see. It's kind of easy, you know. So I competed for so many years, you know, and I competed like every time was possible, you know. If there was a competition every weekend, I was there, you know. So uh that gets your mindset, you know, in one way, right? So now when you're going to become a coach, and then I know all that, but how are we gonna, you know, make these guys understand, you know, what, how are we gonna, you know, take that out of my head and put there, you know, words in practice, you know? So that's when you really gonna become a black belt. So when they say, like, you know, your jiu-jitsu journey start as a black belt, is totally true, because from the white belt to a black belt, you know, like you're having fun, you know, and all of that, you know, competing, going around, doing all that stuff, and most of the time, you don't have to worry about coach or nothing. You know? Now you're a black belt, right? And people see that belt, you know, and like, okay, and you competed and you did all this, you did good, everything. Now they're like, yeah, okay, how do I do this? You know, like,
Yeah.
oh, now you got to learn how to, you know, and then you have to remember how your coach, you know, did coach you, you know, how did the, um, and a lot of times uh, you know, there was a lot of yelling in the beginning of my coaching career, you know. I will get frustrated, I'll get mad, you know, because I'll be honest, I did learn super quick, you know. Always been a visual guy, you know. I have a pretty good photographic memory, you know. So I could see the move one time and then, you know, go and start working on it, right?
Mhm.
And on my live roles, you know, doing my live roles, I can get that picture that, you know, what we train and putting there. So I think that was one of the things that helped me a lot, you know, to uh, get to my black belt in a very short time. Um, but you know, like when you're coaching, then there's 50 people in your class, and no one is, you know, they're all different,
Yeah.
and they're going to learn in different ways, and they have a different body type, right?
Yeah.
Now you got to understand, you know, like also my body type, you know, is different than theirs, you know. The technique that works very well for me, you know, my work just for feel, right? And so back then I started like, okay, you know, like there are a lot of techniques, you know, I learned before, you know, and they're like, I always, you know, kind of kept those techniques aside because, you know, to me, like, okay, I don't really need that because I'm a bigger guy, you know. So that's kind of, it's not like they're useless, they're not useless, but I don't really need that technique, you know, because of my size, my strength, you know. But now I'm coaching, right? Is that fair to someone who's in my class and he is 160 pounds? don't learn that technique from me because, you know, I decide not to apply that technique or not have that technique on my book. No.
Yeah.
So I have to, you know, I have, as a coach, you know, it's my duty, you know, to show them thing, things I don't like, or, you know, things that I think don't work to me, you know, so I have to show everything. It's my job, you know, to show them.
You
So
had to,
you know, learn how to become a coach
yeah,
is hard. It's huge, you know, and how you set like a good way to get these guys to, you know, learn pretty quick from you in a good way, you know. So back then, I remember like we would go to the gym and they will show like a 2 or 3 positions technique, and next day you go there, you know, let's say the day before you work in a back taken, you know, the next day like you're working a foot lock, straight foot lock. I was like, you know, I was
randomness,
like,
randomness.
yeah, you know what I mean? I was like, I started like, okay, you know, I think I'm going, I like be methodical, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Having a structure like to what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. If you watch my grappling matches, you know, I always try to put those guys on my game and start with the takedown. You know, if they close the guard, it's the open guard, the pass. You know, the half guard. You know, to the side, to the mount, and then eventually the submission if it's there. You know, so I just like, okay, I'm gonna do it that way. I'm gonna, you know, start from there. You know, and
Very
going that way.
structured. Yeah.
You know, so you just connect all the dots. You know,
Yeah, I
connect
got
everything. You
yeah.
know,
I know exactly what
maybe
you mean.
maybe
Like I got one of my friends, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, world champion. But man, anytime he shows anything, it is like random. Like we're doing an arm bar, then we're doing a choke, then we're in a different position, then we're doing a takedown, then there's a knee bar. You know, like it's always so random, but he's so talented and he's such a good performer. You know, like it's always good roles and good training, but I never know what's gonna happen because it's just like you said, that the method, like for him, is just like on the inside. Like he has his method, but when he goes out to try to like teach and show other people, it doesn't come out so much. And that's something that, you know, what you're saying makes a lot of sense because a lot of students and athletes, they can't comprehend too many moving parts. Like they need kind of a pattern and a structure to follow. And, you know, and you having to grow as a coach probably has increased your technicality as a martial artist because you had to learn so much about the techniques and the applications and the body types and the logic. So you've probably grown as an athlete, you know, after you stopped fighting more than you probably did before, you know, you were a coach because you just had to learn so much more about the technique.
yeah. And you know, when you there's also, I don't know if it's a culture thing, you know, or it's just like the way it is. But Brazilians, they they get pretty. We're talking about like Brazilians in general and on everything, not only jiu-jitsu. They get pretty bored, you know, doing routines. Brazilians, they always, you know, like if they have to do like 3 days in a row the same thing, they're like they want to kill themselves, you know. So that led them, you know, to they're very creative people, you know. When I was in Japan, and then you know, I was talking to she was one of the managers for Pride, and she used to work for Toyota, and she said, yeah, you know, like all our car designs we get from Brazilians, you know. It was, oh really? It's like, yeah, I didn't know that. It's like, yeah, you know, they're very creative, you know. They're kind of like a, you know, uh, it's like here, like we give like, you know, to Japanese to do the designs, you know, they'll do the same car like for 50
Yeah.
years, you know. So
Yeah.
it's just like the way you guys are, you know. And I think that's why I also think, you know, jiu-jitsu developed in a different way in Brazil because, you know, they will not come like, okay, they got these techniques, and I was like, let's put this, let's do that, you know, let's try to different ways and stuff, you know. But that one thing then I noticed, right, come United States, you know, Americans, you know, they go nuts if we'll teach them jiu-jitsu the way we do in Brazil, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, you know, they'll leave the gym because they're like, yeah, man, this is not structure on it, you know, like I don't know where we at, you know, I need a goal set, you know, all of that, you know, and in the beginning, you know, like I'll get pissed off, you know. Some guys like, so how much time to get my blue belt, you know? I was like, shut the fuck up, go train, you know, and you're gonna get
Yeah.
your blue belt,
Never
then
asked that
you
question.
start, yeah, you know what I mean? But then like you start to understand, you know, like how, you know, this is how, you know, the whole American society is, you know, structured.
Yeah.
You get goals set, you know. And I started learning that because I have my kid, you know, he goes to school, you know, and they go in that way. Not like Brazilian schools, you know, they do so much different, you know, but it is a difference, you know, like you know how they start setting goals, you know, for high school and college. Brazil, like I started setting my goals for college when I was in high school.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so,
About a month
so,
before it was time to go, it's like I better set some goals.
yeah, yeah. It was like, yeah, I have that future thing, you know. You start thinking like months ahead, right? It's like, yeah, it's it's the day after tomorrow, right? I gotta pay that bill. Oh, I didn't think about it. Yeah, I was like, I gotta, you know.
Yeah.
But that's just a difference between, you know, the culture, how, you know, things go. I think the Americans think, you know, more like in a long term, you know. Brazilians like it's a short term kind of, you know. It changed though, like the ones they came to America, they started to realize, you know, that you know the way is to get structure, you know, in the classes, start developing, you know, programs, you know. Um, I I don't know, but me, who can I say that started maybe first? I can't recall, you know. I know like Gracie Barra has successful, you know, structure uh, because they put it all of that. But most likely, you know, uh, all the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu dojos run by Brazilians, you know, if they don't put some structure, you know, it's kind of hard to achieve then, you know, like people come and go, you know,
Yeah.
but how to keep them around then, you know.
Yeah.
They
No,
need to
definitely
see
have
the
to
goals.
plan and
They want to know.
yeah, you got to plan and
So,
organize. You know, and that's been very, you know, has been very prevalent in the industry as it moves forward, and it makes a lot of sense. And you know, and seeing you being the athlete, you know, coming to the U.S. and then becoming a coach. But on a more fun note, when you go back to your fights, what was your favorite MMA fight? And then do you remember who hit you the hardest? Those are my two questions. Favorite MMA fight and who hit you harder than anybody?
my favorite fight, my
Yes.
fight,
Yeah, your favorite fight
um,
that you competed in.
and I pretty much all of them, but I really enjoyed going against Gonzaga. You know, I liked
Gambrill's a
that
big
fight.
guy.
Yeah, you know, I like that fight for two reasons. You know, like I always, you know, liked him as a jiu-jitsu competitor, and I was starting. He was already. I started. He was already a brown belt, you know, and I, you know, always liked, you know, the way he played, you know, like his jiu-jitsu, and even though I lost, though, I really enjoyed that one. I did like the Breno Vera too. Um, the ones, the ones I won, uh, they're all good. I mean, of course, I like the ones, but I think my favorite might be against Gonzaga, and the one I I I don't like is the one I did against Gilbert Ivel, but that's for reasons beyond the cage. It's just because my son born like 2 hours before that fight in Holland,
Yeah,
and I was there fighting, and there was some complications, you know. So my wife
that was a
had to
tough
be
time.
taken to the hospital in Holland. They do deliver babies at home. They only take, moms to hospital if there's some bad complications. So my manager came, right before we leaving to the fights, my room. And then he's like, man, sorry, but I have to tell you before, we go there. He explained to me what was going on. I was freaking out. So
Yeah.
I yeah, my head wasn't there. All I could think
Right.
about it is like, I want to get out of here, as soon as I can, and go home. It
Oh,
was just like,
absolutely. Yeah, I can.
yeah. So
I couldn't
that's
imagine. Yeah, I couldn't
yeah,
imagine
the
that.
feeling, the feeling that is one thing when you when you lose, like, and you feel like, okay, I did what I could, and the guy was just better than I was, he won, you know. But when you're there, but you're not there,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and then you know, but it is what it is, everything was fine. I got home, I got in my arms and that big smile, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it was
Well,
like,
I'm
yeah,
glad that it
and
all worked
yeah,
out, but I'm sure that that was probably a very difficult moment.
yeah.
So, who
Funny
hit you the
enough,
hardest?
huh?
So, who hit you the hardest? Do you have a memory of like, oh my gosh, man, this one guy hit me so hard, couldn't believe it?
Yeah, that was Gonzaga.
Gonzaga, he was the heavy
Yeah,
hitter. Oh
yeah.
man.
He
Yeah.
he cracked, he cracked the my eye globe in the back. Yeah,
Man, he
yeah,
always had so much power. Like his kicks, I mean, oh my gosh, man, I would die if I got hit by one of his kicks. He'd probably break me in half. I'm a lightweight, man. I don't think I could handle that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
I've been asked, like, if you could go and rematch, guys, who would you like to rematch? It's like, everyone that I lost to, but Gonzaga. It's like that was Chelsea asked me that, right?
yeah.
He's like, why? It's like, because that man made me feel like, I got no skills to beat him. Like I just felt like, no matter what I could, throw on the table,
Yeah.
to beat him, I need a lucky punch.
All
And I'm
right.
not, I'm not gonna have a lucky punch, to do. It's just like, like you gotta give up when you're like, you feel okay, is not shame and accept that, like, hey, the guy is just a better fighter than I am. It is what
Yeah,
it
that
is.
happens. Yeah.
So
That's
is not like, I remember back then, like, I was trying to, yeah, it's like trying to convince myself, that was my fault, that he won,
hmm
but it wasn't like what, like, he earned that, he was just better,
yeah.
it's hard to admit that then when you're younger, but then
Yeah.
later, like, what, like, it's something I tell my my fighters sometimes, what, man, like, there are some nights, no matter what you do, the guy on the other side is just better than you are. It's hard to admit, we try to, it's like, oh man, I didn't feel good, maybe I had a flu, oh, it's my strength conditioning's fault, it's like, I shouldn't have sex with my wife last night, so you're gonna try to, find some, but sometimes it is, the guy is just, it was better, had a, better night than he did, nothing we can do about it,
Yeah. It definitely it comes with the sport where it's just like you run the same match 10 times in a row, like it's hard to know what the outcomes are going to be. And like you said, sometimes people are just, they're a better player at that moment in time where, their career and their experience with where they're at versus, like kind of where you're at. And I think that it takes a lot for an athlete and a coach to see that perspective. That's the maturity coming out of it of, kind of been around for a while that shows. I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me today. There's a lot of good stories, really good insight as far as what you noticed, of just being an athlete turning into a coach. I think it's going to really encourage some people out there to kind of just keep going, keep pushing, and just kind of find their own path of martial arts. Is there anything that you'd like to finish with?
Yeah, I just want to tell everyone, you know, like no matter what you um, want in life, uh, the best thing to do, you know, is to go and find out the answer, you know. So it's better than, you know, not trying to. So go ahead, you know, and try as hard as you can and find out what the outcome is, because you're gonna be in peace with yourself, you know, whatever outcome is, you know. If you will be the best at it, you know, you'll find the answer you're gonna be happy with. You're gonna be happy as well if you find out maybe you're not the best at it, but you know, you went for and you did what you had to do, you know, and you are in peace, you know. That's how I feel, you know. I'm not, I haven't been the best, you know, MMA fighter, but I'm happy with me, you know, what I did, you know, and uh, where, you know, jiu-jitsu and MMA took me to, you know, is, I can tell you, is a way better, you know, spot where, you know, I was when I started all of it, you know. So I just want to say that, you know, like if you have something in mind, right, uh, just go, make it happen, you know. Don't like you know, don't be afraid to fail. That's what I'm
Absolutely.
saying, you know.
Well,
Failing is part of the process, is a learning thing, and I'll tell you, you learn from failing, you know, more than you learn from achieving and winning, you know, because if you're winning, everything is okay. You're gonna keep working the way you are. When you lose, you fail, it's okay, I gotta, you know, change some stuff that makes you think ahead, make you, you know, move some pieces, gonna make you smarter then, because, you know, then you have to maybe step out of the box, you know, like bring some, you know, new things, you know, to change that. So it's always a good experience. Winning, losing is gonna make you a better person anyway.
well, that is some excellent advice, and you definitely are a major influence in the industry. I mean, I put you into the legend status category because I mean you've been around since the beginning and accomplished a lot as an athlete and as a coach, and definitely have a lot of people looking up to you. And I think they're going to take a lot of positivity out of your conversation today. And there was a lot of details in there I think that will help apply to people not only with their training but you know outside of the gym as well. So I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great afternoon, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
I appreciate you having me here, giving me the opportunity, and I really do. And thank you for all the compliments. You know, uh, I had no idea like you follow me all, you know, back then, but yeah, I really do appreciate for the opportunity. You know,
Absolutely. Thank you.
thank you.